everyone, welcome back to another Loon Press podcast. So it's been a minute since the last one, but today I'm delighted we have a wonderful guest with us today, Colin Anderson. Colin, how are things?
Cold but lovely.
Cold but lovely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It is that time of year. I think was it snowing actually in England recently.
Yeah, with dribs and drabs. Nothing to report. Yeah.
Yeah,
Little tiny.
I'm hoping for a big snow this year because I think the last big one was 2018, and it was a nice few weeks off work. But
I'm self-employed. I don't want
Oh, you don't
that.
want no, no good, no good. So, for our viewers, this is actually our second attempt at this podcast. We were meant to do this last week, but Colin forgot to. He booked what was it, a theater
I
play?
went to see The Pillow Man at the theatre at Somersea Plays. It was amazing, directed by Stephen Davis. It was phenomenal, even though I felt very bad all the way through it because you rang me just as I was about to go to theatre. So yes, I'm here.
It's okay. Well, look, here we are now. So, the anticipation is built up. Anyway, we're here today to talk about your latest work. Hopefully it'll make it out. No, the blur has blocked it, but it says the senseless ramblings of an unremarkable yet likable oaf. I think we can see it there. Yeah, there we
Yeah,
go.
we got it. Yeah.
So Colin, this is your fourth
It is
book.
my fourth book. Yes, the series of the Unremarkable Yet Likeable Oaf. So it kind of started accidentally with the journey of, which was like a much darker book, and then there was the banal mumblings of, which was that was like my first proper collection, if you like, rather than a narrative. And then we've had the pointless witterings, and then, as you just said, the new one, the senseless ramblings. So yeah.
So it's interesting because like you're a physicist, yes.
Well, yeah, by default, even though I've never really used it, yeah.
Oh, okay. And your day job then is you said you're self-employed. That's what?
Well, I went through school like a really academic brain, and I went through school and I could do maths like standing on my head, and everyone just said, I don't think I made a decision till I was about 20. Everyone said, "Oh, what A levels are you going to do?" Rather than, do you want to do A levels? Then it was what uni are you going to do? And it was like, oh, okay. And then I had actually, so I did my degree in theoretical physics. And then I was set up to be an accountant in Reading. And then I remember the day I was holding the blandest of grey suits in a shop, and I went, I can't do this. And I bought a plane ticket, and off I went traveling for a few years. Yeah.
Wow.
So
So
now I do landscape gardening, but I've had construction companies, I've run bars, I was a teacher on, like yourself, I've taught sixth form, I've taught mainstream high school, I've taught primary, I've taught behavioural, and I've just spent 5 years teaching in an autistic school as well. So I like to change.
yeah, so you've done a bit of everything. Uh, Lots of fingers and lots of pies. Yeah, no, I just remember being surprised when I found out you were physical. Then I was thinking, well, it's you've obviously a very mathematical brain, but then you obviously indulge in a lot of poetry as well. Um, and what like so just to come briefly back to the journey. Something made you kind of sit down one day and write. I want to capture this journey, but not even. I mean, most people think, right, I want to tell my story, but what made you want to tell it through the lens of poetry? Why poetry?
It came about because so the journeys through my it's my journey through mental health issues when I was at the Hillsborough football tragedy years ago, and I kind of back in the 80s, nothing was dealt with, so it was just brushed under the carpet. So I just hid it in the back of my brain, but of course it doesn't hide; it just kind of festers and grows. And then it was about a couple of years ago, 2, 3 years ago, I sat at the funeral of my cousin who just decided to take his own life. The story we've heard so many times, everyone thinks it's all great. And I went into the school I was teaching at because we were all under stress. And I had a photograph of me, age 24, and a photograph of Tommy. And Anna said, the only difference between these two is that I got help. I was at his funeral and I'd been writing bits of poetry anyway. And there's a guy called a really good poet and friend of mine called Oliver James Lomax, who I worked with at the time. And he just said, just write it. He said, put it out, write it. He said, you write poetry, write it. And he kind of gave me the link so I could publish. And because it was all in my head, I think it took me about a week to write. And it just kind of
Yeah.
went out my brain onto the page. and then you have to faff a bit because that's the weird thing. You say I'm a scientist. I'm not a creative. I don't write. I can't do that. And that was genuinely for I think 3 or 4 years ago. That was my idea. It was like I can't write things. I'm a scientist. I'm logical. I'm not creative. I don't know, but you kind of prompted it in me, and I wrote it. And I thought, even if it's the only book I ever released, then that's fine. I've because it's raised as well. Because the main thing for it, it's raised about just over £1,000 for Mind for their Time to Talk campaign as well.
Wow.
So
Oh wow. The
it was
just th-
accident almost.
this book here, the journey, the raise £1,000 for.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
each time I sell a book, I kind of £2 of it goes to Mind, and all of the the launch parties I did for it, all the door takings all went to Mind and stuff.
That's amazing.
So
Yeah.
so if nothing else, I've achieved that.
Absolutely. Well, no, I mean, well, we know that you've achieved four books anyway. And the Unremarkable Yet Likeable Oaf. What sort of brought around that idea of calling yourself the Oaf? Or uh,
Well, I mean, I am an oaf. I'm a big, stupid, clumsy thing that breaks things. I've got big, stupid, clumsy hands. I trip over everything,
yeah,
and I'm heavy-handed. I'm an oaf, but I think I'm kind of quite likable as well. And I don't know where the unremarkable come from. It just come to me one day, and it just
yeah.
became the title.
And just before you had written the journey, you'd never put like you'd never written poetry before, or had you dabbled in it a small bit?
I had been about 6 months before. We were away on holiday. We were in France, and I had a little notebook. It was a little work notebook that I used to just put measurements and things in. And my daughter was up. We were over in France. My daughter was up in her bedroom shouting because there was a bug in her bedroom. And I just got this phrase going round my head: "Dad, there's a bug in my bedroom." And I sat there and I wrote a poem. And it was like the family were there looking at me, and I was like hiding the book. It was like I was trying to hide porn or something. It was like, what are you doing? Nothing, nothing, not to see. Right. And that was it. I don't know where it come from. It just
Yeah,
from that moment on, I quite liked the release of it. And then I started writing. And I just did it for things that made me happy, things that annoyed me, things that, yeah, the same as all my writings are now, just things that are around me.
yeah. I suppose. And here we are. Perhaps
Yeah.
you'd like to read a poem. Now, I don't know if you want to read it from your latest one, or maybe even from the journey. But is there anyone that in particular that might be a nice one to kind of kick us off?
Should we go for one from the new one?
Yeah, yeah, we can.
Yeah. We don't want too long, do we? We haven't got lots of time. We could go with, so there's one that I introduce. As I used to be a teacher, and uh, it always used to get me that you'd sit in a staff room and people would come in and be like, "Have we seen Steve today? What's up with Steve? He's weird. What's he doing?" And I was like, "He's a teenager. Of course, he's bloody weird. It's like that's what people do." So this teenage love story was based on me when I was that child. I was 13 or 14. So every time one of my students would come in and would be a bit weird, I'd kind of, I would remember back to Gillian McRae, she was called. If she's listening, I'm really sorry. Okay, so teenage love story. You were seated, as ever, opposite me with your invisibility cloak turned to max. In 4 years, I'd never seen you in any of the many, many lessons we'd shared. And then, in a flash of teenage extravagance, in the middle of Mr. Branton's chemistry lesson, somebody powered down your cloak, and you instantaneously transformed from a non entity into the center of my entire universe. As you glided through the school corridors, I followed, hoping to absorb some of your beauty. I followed enraptured. I followed simultaneously, hoping you would talk to me and praying you wouldn't, as I couldn't cope with the pressure. There was no way I could form a non mortifying response to anything you said, and I had more chance of levitating than I did initiating a conversation. For 2 weeks, I followed. For 2 weeks, I dreamed. For 2 weeks, you wonder why that boy who had never acknowledged your existence in 4 years was always there when you turned around. Until the moment you disappeared as quickly as you appeared. Invisibility cloak turned back onto full power. You receded into anonymity mode. Gillian, who? A temporary existence.
Yeah, it's there's always those kind of quiet students that just sort of fade into the background, and it's always the loud ones, the sort of sort of overconfident ones that sort of kind of take the spotlight, you know. But in the shadows, there's always those kind of interesting characters that have a lot of depth to them as well, but they just don't always show it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's you know, when you look at the title and stuff, you expect kind of and it is there. A lot of poems are hilarious. You know, you laugh out loud, but there are those. I suppose you use the kind of the funny touch to sort of get into the deep ideas as well, and the kind of the things we sometimes overlook. Um,
Yeah. I mean, earlier this year, so like well, July, he died. So my dad got ill about May time, and just over a 6, 8 week illness, and then unfortunately died. So in that time, obviously, there's a section in the book about that. I think there's like about 10 poems in a row that cover the chronology of it,
yeah.
and obviously some of it's dark and emotional and painful and guttural, but then there are funny things that happen. Where that whole black humor is beautiful, isn't it? So,
Um, I don't know if you have your Velcro piece with you now today, but that was a very I remember that was one of the first poems you read actually at your launch recently in Berry. But
yeah.
it was it was unique. Yeah, I don't know if you'd like to read that poem perhaps about the Velcro, because I know I
So
think the dedication is oh, I'm after skipping it now. If I'm not wrong though, I think you dedicated it or the something about
oh,
Velcro, but
yeah. So,
oh
well,
yeah, sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, first say my
acknowledgement.
dad who died when I was putting this book together. You were a top bloke. Thanks for the memories. I've never threatened anyone with the word Velcro before. Uh,
So this is so my dad, like me, was a mouthy little git, and we're kind of always full of jokes and full of this and full of that, and he kept. Kind of, even though we didn't want to admit it, we all knew the end was nigh, kind of thing. So we kept making jokes about them. So first he just said something like, he said, if it gets too bad, just give me one of those jabs. And I was like, Dad, you're not a dog. We can't do that, It's but then he kept going on too much and kept saying it. So it gave us Velcro, which was, here it is. So it's bedbound. I sense your frustrations, but voicing it, the joke about them accidentally leaving a bottle of morphine behind to several medical folk? Bad idea. You see, now you're a suicide risk. Your place in this beautifully run hospice with individual care is at risk. Carry on with this dialogue, and you'll be wearing a very long sleeve jacket and Velcroed to a bed before you can say, I was only joking, even if you weren't. Should we have a chat? When we go through your options. And then, just as the psychologist arrives with a consultant, I open and close the Velcro strap on my backpack, tightly grip my arms around my body, mouthing Velcro as I leave.
what was his reaction
He
when you said,
looked at me with a look of, you smart ass. And it was just, so I got sent out. I went down to the coffee shop.
yeah,
And then kind of about 20 minutes later, they came out and I went back in and he just looked at me and he went, I played the game. Shut up. It was like,
okay,
he was like, I did what I was meant to do. So, and then he got to stay in a hospice, Woodlands Hospice in Liverpool, the most phenomenal people in the world.
yeah. And the staff in the hospice, they didn't take kindly to the joke he made anyway about the morphine, or they kind of
Well, I think they were actually, checking him because I probably would have sectioned him if he had kind of carried on with it. That's why it's like, just like, this place is beautiful, don't blow it.
yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Um, the name that struck me in this book actually as well, Elliot Perlick. I thought,
Yes.
yeah, I thought that's the name for a poet if ever I saw one. But he kind of he ended up giving you the idea for the title, the senseless Ramblings.
Yeah, so I'd never, because even though I'd released 3 books, I'd only ever done private gigs, so it was like I would do the launch and my friends would come, and that's a different vibe, innit, 'cause they're all your friends, they all want you to do well. I'd never done an open mic, I'd never done anything, and then I think it was January this year, so it was only, I've only kind of been performing in that way for this year. Um, I went and I sat down at, open mic thing, and like the first time you do it, and you're scurrying around I was trying to find Kerry. I was like, who's Kerry? Anyone female or what? I was like, who Kerry? Who Kerry? Eventually found Kerry. Bought a drink, sat down, and then this guy Elliot comes sat next to me. So I was just chatting to him, and then I had my other book out I was going to read out of, and he said, "Oh, is this your first one?" I said, "Well, I'm about to publish my next one." And he's like, "Okay, so what's it called?" I said, "I don't know yet." So he saw the titles on the other three, and he said, "I should be called the Senseless Ramblings." And I went, "Well, there you go." It's kind of
Yeah,
serendipitous, isn't it?
yeah, and I think it's crazy to think that like 'cause you have had it like this, as I said, your fourth collection, and they're not like normally like when you see posts released that they're usually pamphlets, but these are like they're sizable enough, like they're packed with poems. So you've obviously had a lot, you've written a lot, and I just think it's crazy that you've only started performing at open mics this year. I think when I saw you at Andy Porter's launch, that was literally like one of the first times as well that you had. Am I right
Yeah,
in
yeah,
saying?
not
Yeah,
far off. Yeah, I think I'd
yeah,
performed in 2 places before that. So yeah.
yeah. So like, I suppose I was just surprised. What kind of kept you? What held you back from getting on this scene earlier? And trying to put yourself out there and go to open mics and readings and.
I think I was kind of comfortable. I'd got in, I'd started writing, and I was enjoying it, and I was writing my books. And to be honest, the writing I do for me, whether it's the best or the worst poetry in the world, I don't really care. I do it because I love doing it, and it enables me to vent all my spleens and get rid of all my anger, or if something funny happens, or I can, I go back into my brain for old memories, and they all come out. And I 100% don't know how I used to survive without writing, because all I control all of my emotions through it now. It
Mm,
feels. But I was in like a comfort zone of it, and then a good friend of mine, Paul Edmonds, he said one day, "If you thought of doing an open mic?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I mean that's scary. They're all like proper poets." And he just went, "You've released 3 books. Why are you not a proper poet?" So I just said, "Right, I'll do one. I'll do what." I'd always encourage my children to do it. So you just try, and if you try and it goes pear shaped, so be it. So I
agree.
went and I thought, even if I go and do this one and I hate it, or I crash and burn, or I'm terrible, whatever, I can say I've done one.
That's
And
it.
then I did it. And yeah, they were so supportive. It was a lot at Broadly Speaking at Broad Street Social in Bury, and they were just super supportive. Everyone was dead nice, and it was so good hearing the range of different poetry coming back at you as well. Because
Mm.
obviously I surround myself by my poetry and I read bits, but it was so good to hear live performances from other people. So
Yeah, it was interesting. You said there, you were saying, your friend said that you're not, you've written 3 books. Why aren't you a proper poet? Do you think that that's what a proper poet has to be? Someone who performs? Can a poet just retreat into the background and just write away, or do you think they owe it to themselves and the world, or how do you feel?
do you know? I think it's entirely up to the person. I now feel better performing, and what I've written, and I can guarantee, and I think I said at the start of that book, my writing has improved so much because of performing.
Performing?
Um, because I know I almost write knowing how it's going to perform.
Yeah,
But there are some poets and some, I can't think of any off the top of my head now. There's some that I think read really well, but I've seen them perform and I've kind of go, yeah, it's okay.
mm,
But when you read it, it's incredibly powerful.
yeah,
And then you've got the opposite as well. Have you? Some people who I've seen their written work and gone, yeah, it's all right, quite like that. And then you hear it
yeah,
and you reduce to tears. It's amazing, isn't it? What the
yeah.
difference of the two.
It
So
is. It's yeah, because sometimes you read poets that are very experimental on the page. They might have all these slashes and they position the words a certain way, and the poems are a mad shape. But I always thought, well, if you're reading that out to someone, they're not going to see all that.
yeah,
It's just going to sound all disjointed and weird. So I often wonder, like, there's very much the stage poet and the page poet,
yes.
and I just think it's an interesting, like, the disparity sometimes is mad. But I suppose it's interesting. You said you'd be more conscious now of it's helped your writing a lot because you performed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
and I know several people like a lot of my more narrative poems. Some of the longer ones from Caleb. I mean, Teenage Love Story. There was quite a narrative, but I write some, about ridiculous events as well as like the really emotional events. I'll write them about ridiculous things that have happened to me in my past. Like don't forget your goodie bag is, it's too long and probably too too perverse for this podcast right now. But it was a stupid situation that I found myself back in years ago, and every time I perform those ones, people seem to buy into them a lot more when when it is a narrative about me. I mean, even obviously there's the ones about my dad in the previous book, shouting at the waves, which was when we were up in Scotland, and I looked out and there was a lady on the beach. And you're looking out and think, what's going on? And then I fairly quickly worked out that she was like in a bad state and was trying to throw herself into the sea and end her life and all the rest of it. So I ended up rushing down, and that one, when I read that, you know you're affecting people because you get that kind of that guttural silence at the end, and people in tears and things. So that's, I think, by performing and by writing, the narrative style is what people enjoy more of in my work. But yeah, so I think, and that only comes from performing, because otherwise I'd never know.
yeah, people enjoy stories.
Yes.
People enjoy hearing stories. Yeah. Who would you say is your biggest influence? Maybe as a writer or performer. Or...
Well, when I first started writing, I think I'd been listening to a Henry Normal Radio 4 program, and I liked Henry Normal's poetry because I could understand it. And I think that's what I'm keen with mine whenever I go out, because people either hear poetry and immediately they hate it because I know I hate poetry because it's all that, wandering lonely as a cloud, and it's all metaphors, and I don't know what's going on. Whereas anyone, you know, for my poetry can understand it. There's nothing
Mm,
complex about it. It's simple, and it
yeah.
does what it says on the tin. And I think that when I first heard Henry Normal, and I found it hilarious, it's that beautiful bittersweet. He's amazing at doing that thing where, he drags you down into the deepest, darkest emotion and then just drops in one little line that turned it from like a heartstring into a giggle or a laugh. And anyone who can balance those two as well as him. So when I started hearing him, it kind of convinced me that I could pick up a pen and I could write it.
Mm.
It's like, well, at the start, it was only for my viewing anyway. So it was, and then I realized. So I would say, for the person who got me into it, Henry Normal was your man.
Henry Normal. I've never heard
Yeah.
of Henry Normal. Um,
He
what
does,
is
he
it?
does a lot of writing, TV writing and stuff as well. Things like the Royal Family. I know he wrote the
Oh
Royal
yeah,
Family. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, the script for that. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. It was
yeah.
him and Craig Cash and lady whose name I just forgotten. Yeah, Carolina Hearn. Yeah, the three of them wrote the script for that. So
Very good.
incredibly funny man. So what I read, but what I've discovered is I can't try and be other people.
Mm,
I read Wendy Cope a while ago, and then
mm.
kind of half. I think I wrote about 6 poems, and I think I was trying to be Wendy Cope, and I ended up being neither Colin nor Wendy, and it was just the most confusing pile of rubbish. So I have to very much read it and separate myself from it.
Yeah, I think you said that. You said that in a text to me recently. You'd read because I think you had my collection and you were reading it, and then you were saying, it's interesting because my poem I can't be like you were talking about style, I think, and you were saying something to the effect of I could never write like you or Andy or I just, so I suppose, do you ever feel like you try to mimic other people, or did you at some level do you think I'd love to be like him, or do you ever try and, or are you just more comfortable now just kind of
Think I tried that for a while, and I would read someone. I think they were amazing. Like you read a bit of Bukowski, and then all of a sudden I try and it. I can't do that. As I said to you, and there's a beautiful word. It's in a couple of my poems. Susie Dent said it on a radio program once called "confelicity,"
mm,
and I think in my older age, I'm getting to it. So you've got Jealousy, which obviously comes with negative connotations. I'm jealous you can write like that. I want to be able to do it. I don't want you to be able to write it. Or I envy that you can write like that. Well, I'm jealous you can write like that. Or I'm envious you can write like that. But I'd still quite like to be able to do it.
Yeah.
But then the next stage up for me, which I think I'm reaching now, is confelicity, which is I'm glad you can write like that because I really enjoy it. And I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't enjoy it if I could do it. So what's the point in being able? So I'm just glad other people can do their thing.
Do it. Yeah. Yeah. I think I read somewhere, I heard someone say before, good poets mimic, great poets steal.
Yeah. Was that Cooper Clark or something, was it?
It could have been, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely that.
Uh, yeah. It just had me thinking as well there about John Cooper Clarke, obviously, because I think he said in an interview as well. This is unrelated to what we are just saying there, but he's saying, if you're gonna perform, because we were talking about performance poetry as well, you have to dress up like someone who people would pay to see or people will go and see, and obviously he has a very distinctive style. But it just made me think of you with the accountant suit, the grey suit, the bland, and I can't do it. And now you're there in your tartan, you got your tartan hat, you got your tartan pants, the yellow shirt, so you've
Yeah.
definitely found your own kind of, you know, your own
I've
vision of
always felt like an idiot, but yeah, that's I quite like that. I think the hat has become very much my performance thing. Is that the hat stays on?
the hat stays on. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another very, very funny poem you read out during the launch, the granny poem, about the two cars, remember? Uh,
Oh, the yes, my favorite car crash. Yeah.
favorite car crash.
Yeah.
That was page 92. You'll have to read that out because that went down a treat at
There
the.
we go. So this, I love the introduction to that because I've read this about 5 or 6 times now. When you say to everyone, do you have a favorite car crash? And rightfully, people just look at you and go,
Yeah,
"Why would I have a favorite car crash?"
and this is
Probably a
a
night.
true story as well. Uh,
But everything that's happened in there is true. Just as a slight aside before I read it, I was chatting to someone the other day, and I was like, now in my head, I would pass a lie detector test on all of these things because it's true.
yeah,
Now, over the years, the details might have changed, and it might have been, red rather than blue, or 6 of us rather than 2 of us. But kind of all of it is true. So all of them are all based on true stories. I don't think I've ever. No, I've never had a count. At the top of my head, I don't think I've ever made any of the background to any of the stories up.
yeah.
So
Well,
they
I
all.
believe that because I remember when I heard that, I was like, well, you can't write that. You can't make that.
No, it was just
Yeah,
no, this was I was sitting in there's a garden centre around the corner from me, and occasionally, we'd nip round and I kind of have, like, a cup of coffee, do a bit of writing, a bit of work, whatever, and it's garden centre, it's always full of pensioners, isn't it? And I was looking out the window, and I saw my favourite ever car crash. So this one is, it's, Crash Test Grannies. Maximum speed, 1 mile per hour. 2 pale blue aged Nissan Micras inch backwards out of their respective parking places. Slow and getting slower, yet impact seems somehow inevitable. Collision course is set. If only one of the drivers could focus through the speed-induced blare. The bumpers caress. A light casing cracks. It takes 5 minutes for the 2 octogenarians to scramble out of their cars, ready for the showdown with the idiot that just crashed into their car. Arms gesticulate, crosswords shared. Eventually, after much fumbling in handbags for pen and paper, details exchanged. Then a disgruntled stomp back to their cars before confusion settles in. The keys don't work. The engine won't start. How much damage was done? Both cars? And then realization arrives. Both shuffle out of their cars they just got into, past each other, and now into their own car.
and I just imagine there must have been just like, were you in like a cafe in the garden center or so?
I was in the cafe looking out, howling with laughter. It
Like
was the
there must have been an audience of people looking out at this scene. I'd say, what the.
just, oh, it was just tremendous. Honestly, they were so annoyed with each other, and then there was that little shuffle, head down, back to their cars. It was like the embarrassment. But
Humility is endless.
yes, even in your 80s.
Who knows? Maybe they became good friends afterwards.
Well, yeah, maybe.
bonding in a nursing home or something. You never know. Um, I wanted to say as well, I love I just two things I love about the book as well. Aside from the poems, uh, all your books have just this kind of bland look about them. Um, I mean that in the best way possible. Just simple. But then it's
Yeah,
well, not really endorsements. You can't really call them endorsements. Renouncements at the back.
yeah.
Um, well done. Have you seen my trainers? Megan Anderson, my daughter. Another what? Toby Anderson, my son. Okay, stick it on the pile of books by my bed. Penny Anderson, my wife. Fantastic, iconic, masterpiece. These are all words. There are plenty more words in this book. Paul Evans, my first ever. And do you actually like? Do you go up to like? Do you actually write down what your family say, or do you just like make it up?
Uh, there is on the, I think, was it Pointless or Banal? Oh, it was on Banal. I've only got the one, so on the blue one. And this one was dead on true, which kind of set me off looking for the other ones. Uh, because I said I was having the other book, and they both said, "Who said you're likable?" So and it was like, right, that's the good. Because I just the whole design thing. I wanted the simple. I like the
Yeah,
simple, and I kind of it does make me. I know the whole world does it, and there's a reason, and it's probably good for marketing. But as I do these for me,
yeah,
when people put on the back, "This is amazing," says such a
yeah,
person, and you send it off, and you get a famous person to give you a quote, and it's there.
yeah.
I don't believe what they say. You know what I mean? It says 5 stars. Well, 5 stars out of what? 300? It could be anything, couldn't it? It's
That's true. Yeah. And I suppose with endorsements, I suppose a lot of the time people just probably feel obliged. They've been sent the book and they're like, oh well, I'll say a nice thing.
yeah,
Dara Fleming. I don't know if you're familiar with Dara Fleming.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. His collection, Enigmatic, came out there a few years ago. But he actually has a sort of a negative endorsement. Actually, well, you can't really call it an endorsement, but it's he sent it to some academic professor in I don't know, Cork, some one of the universities anyway in Ireland. But the professor he never actually gave his name on it. Presumably he didn't want it on it, but the professor got back to him anyway and said this book is not academic enough to endorse. And Dara stuck that
Yeah,
onto the.
I love that because it just, to be honest, it would intrigue me more than someone saying this is the best book I've ever read. You know what I mean? It draws you in and makes you think, yeah, I
I
want
thought
a
it was a
piece of
great.
that.
But like, what does that even mean? This book isn't.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like what? Like, is it's not filled with like hidden Latin reference? I don't know. Like that's
it's just academic snobbery, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. It
It's
is
all it is. There's plenty of it.
plenty of it. We probably only have time for one more poem. Um, I'd I'd like you to read this one because this actually did sort of I, I thought it was lovely. Especially at your launch. And your obviously your family was there and but the last poem in your new one I couldn't write a love poem. Uh, would that be too soppy to end this podcast on or?
No, we can do that. We can do that. So this one, so my wife, Penny, so she turned 50 June last year. So she had a party. And I sat down. I thought, what can I do? I thought, I write poems, and I looked through and I was looking at poems. I love poems, and they are all soppy, and some people write them incredibly well. I'm not one of those people who can do that. So I sat down, and I think I tried and failed about 15 times. And then I wrote this, and it was quite nice because she had a party in the hall. My son and his jazz band had played, so there was a big balcony. So I said, right, you lot all stand over there, so we got every picture of the crowd all in front, and then I could get up and read this. And I think this is probably one of the about 4 poems in my book that rhyme as well, isn't it? It's a rhyming poem, which is very,
Old
very rare
school.
for me. Yeah. So I wrote this for Penny, and as Penny like stars in the journey in the first book, because I know you see a lot of people when you talk about their spouses say, "I wouldn't be here without."
Mm.
Even when anyone reads the first book, you will understand that I know for a fact I would not be here if it wasn't for Penny. So I kind of, even though it's soppy, I do mean all of it. So I don't mind reading it. So it's called "I Couldn't Write a Love Poem." I couldn't write a love poem. I'd probably just cry. The tears would make the ink run. So I guess I'll just not try. I couldn't write a love poem. I wouldn't know where to begin. I'd have to think of all the reasons I love you, and there are lots of them within. I couldn't write a love poem to tell you what you mean to me, how you make my life worth living, how you give me a reason to be. I couldn't write a love poem and tell you all your foibles and traits, that I love spending time with you and how you're simply one of life's greats. I couldn't write a love poem about how you make me smile, how you're beautiful inside and out, how you charm me and beguile. I couldn't write a love poem, put into words your empathy and caring, even though you blow your nose too loudly, and snotty tissues are eternally appearing. I couldn't write a love poem, write down how lucky I am that you're my wife. So I just won't bother trying and be hopeful that you'll be there all my life.
Of course, the irony is there. You did write a love poem. You know. Yeah,
In
I
the only
think
way I know how.
the only way you know how. Yeah, no, it's lovely. It was a nice end to it, and yeah, I think I've written two or three love poems for my partner over the years, but I I've kind of like I've slowed down with it. Not that I don't love her any less, but I remember she said she's from Donegal, and she was like, "Oh, I see that haven't written any love poems recently for me, you know, and all that." But I said to her, I'm going to write her a big 12 part, like kind of dramatic monologue love poem in the near future. But that was a nice one
Well,
there.
after I read that out, I know a lot of my friends were just like, "Cheers, my wife's 50 next year. She's going to be expecting one of them now, you git." I got a lot of abuse.
Oh well, sure. Look, well, look, we have about 2 minutes left. Colin. So I presume we're going to see another one in the near future. Another. Section.
Yes, the what's it called? It's called the inane. I can't remember what it's called. I've already named it. Let me have a quick look. The inane dribblings of an unremarkable yet likable oaf.
You named
Uh,
dribbling.
I
Very good.
think I've got about 25 poems towards that one now, but I always have about 100 poems in each one. But so start with 140, get a cull about 40 of them, get it down to about 100.
Very good. Well, look, for anyone watching, if you want to check out Colin and his work, there's plenty to read out there. Just out of interest, before we finish up, where can people get your works? Um,
Uh, I've got my own Bandcamp page. I've got them on eBay. But if you get me on Instagram, it's Anderson_Colin. There are links on there, or just DM me and I can sort it with you. But yeah,
we can put in links anyway to the description. Colin,
yeah.
thank you for coming on the show. Great chatting to you, and hopefully be over now in over towards I don't know, Chester / the Berry area in the near future. Please God.
Well, I'm down in Kelsall with Andy Porter, another one of your guys, next week. What's the pub called? The White Horse or something. So yeah, we're doing a reading together down there again. So
Lovely. Well, thanks for coming on, Colin, and hope to see you soon.
you will do. Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Very good. Thanks.